I will never get tired of seeing that intro. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Let's Play Final Fantasy VIII. This one has been a favorite of mine since I was a kid. FF8 is the game that got me into Final Fantasy, in fact. By accident, to boot. When I was a kid, I was at my friend's house watching him play FF7, and I'd never seen anything like it before when I was that age. I was just instantly enamored with it, so later that night I went out to Toys R Us to pick up a copy of it, and I misread the Roman numeral on the shelf, so I wound up accidentally purchasing FF8 instead of 7, and I completely fell in love with it. I since then went on to play every single mainline Final Fantasy, with the exception of 12, which I'm just now in the process of catching up with, streaming a playthrough of that on Twitch. So in case you haven't noticed yet, I'm not going to be reading out every single text box, because this is still in the era before Final Fantasy became a voiced-over series. That happened, I think, with 10. Too many text boxes to fully read out. But in case you don't want to read them for yourself, I will be summing up the plot as we go along. For now, we've just met our main character, Squall, and his instructor has just entered his infirmary room. That is Quistis. So, Squall and rival character Cypher heard each other training in the field. Squall is training as a cadet for SEED, which is a mercenary organization. And, yeah, get your Ellipses counter ready. I love this exchange right here. It establishes right off the bat that the main character is kind of a brooding dick. And they're aware enough to have the other characters around him make fun of him. That's what I really like about this exchange. Squall's ambition in life is to dance. Oh! Was that like 4 or 5 Ellipses so far already? We've just met him. Oh, and this transition is so smooth. This music is so great. FF8, I think, has my favorite soundtrack of any Final Fantasy. 9 is pretty high up there too. Not sure which one I like more. I love the Balam Garden theme. What is this Mass Effect shit on the board? Quistis, what are you teaching these people? So yeah, FF8, I love it. It's my favorite game in the entire series. FF9 is probably objectively a little bit better, but I have a spot in my heart for FF8 that's unlike any other. FF8 does get a lot of flack for Squall being Squall, for the drawing system being tedious, for junctioning being convoluted, for the level scaling. As far as all of that goes, Squall is in fact the most brooding, boring, miserable shit of a main character in any Final Fantasy. He's definitely no Zidane. But he doesn't get played off in this like a cool guy. The other characters make fun of him. They don't acknowledge, like, this brooding, mopey dork is cool. They just make fun of him. As for drawing and junctioning, you really need to draw way less often than most people think. It's still not great, but it's not awful. And junctioning, just to get through the game, it's not all that complicated. It's no more complicated than you make it out to be. You can even automate junctioning. More on those systems later, though. I love the depth provided by junctioning, though. It's a pretty fun rabbit hole to fall down. So we're going to return to our seats. And, let's see, tutorial, I think? Yeah. This is going to give us some information on Guardian Forces, which are this game's summons, and it's going to give us access to our first 2 GFs, Shiva and Quetzalcoatl. More on those in a little bit, though. What was the 4th criticism I wanted to address? Oh, right, the level scaling. As for scaling, I've never had a problem with games, especially RPGs that implement scaling systems. I've always loved scaling, because I don't like being able to just overpower everything by being overleveled. That's a really boring way to break a game. On the other hand, FF8 has some really fun and interesting ways to break the game that I'll hopefully show off. And of course, I'm just gonna respond to her with the ellipses. Because that's who Squall is. He's Mr. ... FF8 also has everyone's favorite Final Fantasy minigame. Everyone's favorite except mine, Triple Triad. Which admittedly, it's kind of finally started to grow on me after, this game came out in 99, I think? So if you come over to this guy on the way to the elevator, you get your starter deck of cards. And yeah, I will be playing a bit of Triple Triad later on, and throughout the game, I'm pretty dreadful at it. But we will show off Triple Triad. Triple Triad also provides an avenue, one of many, for, again, breaking the game wide open. You can do some fun stuff with the cards you get from playing Triple Triad. First of all, we are going to come over here and junction Shiva to Squall, which we'll learn more about the junctioning system and the Guardian Forces. Yeah, by the end of the episode, we'll have a pretty good feel for how all of these systems work together. Junctioning provides pretty much the backbone of the game, though. And there are a couple of different types of junctions here. We are junctioning a Guardian Force to Squall. And I also set them to learn certain abilities. I don't want to junction Quetzalcoatl. Just getting a feel for using the menus again, and a feel for my buttons at this point. So, with Quetzalcoatl equipped, I also equipped a few abilities to Squall, namely the ability to summon that Guardian Force, draw, and to use magic, because at this point, with the Guardian Forces being as low of a level as they are, there really isn't much more I can do as far as equipping abilities. Oh, that is a pleasant tune in the background. Love it so much. I could fall asleep to this tune. Then again, I could also fall asleep to Alone in the Town from the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack. Come over here, we notice our first draw point of the game. This stocks us with 7 cures. And coming over to Quistis at the main gate, getting ready to head out to the fire cavern, she is going to explain how junctioning Guardian Forces work, but I kind of already did that. I'll go into a little bit more depth here and fast forward like hell through her dialogue, because there is no reason to listen to 2 minutes of to read 2 minutes of text boxes to understand this system. So Guardian Forces, like I said, are the summons of this game. You equip them through junctioning. So if I want Squall to summon Quetzalcoatl, I junction Quetzalcoatl to Squall. Guardian Forces also have kind of a Pokemon flavor to them, which I'll go in depth with in another episode when that system opens up a little bit more. For now, all you need to know is that Guardian Forces can basically level up and learn abilities, and that by junctioning a Guardian Force to a character, that character can use those abilities and gain stat bonuses. This game's summons are also physically a little bit different from previous games because Tetsuya Nomura wanted them to be unique and mostly non-humanoid, which is why, for instance, instead of Rama being your lightning summon like he normally is in the older Final Fantasies, the pre-FF8 ones, this game uses Quetzalcoatl instead. Also, if we come into Balam proper, there are a couple of things that we can draw early on. I think, yeah, I head down to the docks to draw. I can't remember, it's actually at the end of the pier here. That's mostly it for how junctioning Guardian Forces work. You can also set them to learn specific abilities at a time. So what I want to teach Quetzalcoatl right now is I want to teach him the card ability, and I also want to teach Shiva how to learn Boost. Also, there is one more draw point back here by the train tracks, at the end of the train tracks. I think this is an Asuna draw point? Yeah. And from here, I believe I started just wandering around the world. The fire cave is pretty close to Balam Garden, but I didn't go straight for it because first, I wanted to, even though I mentioned that you don't really need to grind or do any of that all that often, I do want to just make sure that I have Quetzalcoatl's card ability learned before I exit the fire cavern. So I did do a little bit of grinding. That's not going to make it on screen though. Also, this is just showing off how drawing works. You can either stock an ability from an enemy, or you can immediately cast whatever you've just drawn. Casting, because of the way junctioning works, is kind of discouraged in this. It's usually more efficient to junction your magic to stats instead of using your magic to cast spells. Also, you might notice the text box pop up at the beginning of that random battle. It was describing the way Squall's Gunblade works. Basically, if you hit R1 right before an attack lands, you can trigger critical damage. I should also talk about what this playthrough is and is not going to be real quick. This is not going to be a 100%. That would take forever. And honestly, there's a lot of side stuff that's not that interesting. This also isn't going to be a particularly low-level run. It's not going to be like one of those really cool level 7 completion runs. I will be showing off a lot of cool stuff though, and I will get every single Guardian Force, and at least break the game a little bit. This is also going to be my first post-commentary only run, because this is going to be heavily edited. We haven't seen too much of that yet, besides the fast forward through Quistis's 2-minute tutorial. There isn't going to be any on-screen grinding either. Repetition is going to be kept to a minimum, too. I'm going to cut out all of the random battles against enemies that we've already fought, because there really isn't any sense showing the same fight twice. So once we deal with these fish here, we probably won't be seeing them again unless they are mixed into a random battle with an enemy we haven't seen before, or unless there's a particularly good reason to show the fight again. So yeah, there's not going to be any on-screen repetition or grinding, which means not going to be too many random battles popping up. I don't know if I'm going to even bother with Encounter None, because I do at least want to show all of the enemies at once. No sense having a playthrough that's just the boss fights. These fish are something that I took a little bit of time to grind on, because they award 2 ability points per fish, and they come in packs of 2 typically. So they're a good way to teach your Guardian Forces abilities in the early game, because the Guardian Forces learn abilities by acquiring ability points. And the reason I want to teach Quetzalcoatl card right off the bat is because that's going to give me the ability to turn monsters into Triple Triad cards. One of the ways you can really break the game wide open is by carding enemies, because 1, you get AP, but not XP for carding enemies, so you can continue to teach your Guardian Forces new abilities, but you yourself will not level up. And because of the way this game's scaling works, it's much easier to beat it at a lower level than a higher level. And 2, because you can use card mod to refine cards into spells and items, which you can then later junction. And you can get access to some really good magic early on in the game that way. So yeah, there was a little bit of grinding, just to make sure that Quetzalcoatl will learn card before I finish the fire cave because I want to turn a few bomb enemies in the cave itself into cards to use in Triple Triad later. Bombs are pretty good early game cards. Also, as far as XP and AP goes, all Guardian Forces get experience points and ability points. Experience levels them up. AP teaches them new abilities. And the way that works is all Guardian Forces gain equal AP from a fight, even if they die during the fight. But experience is divided up between all of the ones that you currently have junctioned or equipped. So as we enter the fire cave, there were several options. You can choose 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes as your time limit for the amount of time you are given to beat the boss of this dungeon, which isn't really much of a dungeon. Also, the boss of this dungeon is going to become our third Guardian Force, Ifrit. And you get a certain reward, which I'll talk about at a later time, because it ties into a system that we haven't really formally been introduced yet. Basically, you get a reward based on how little time is left when you finish this place off. Also, this is the boost ability, which Shiva learned while I was grinding. You hit select and tap square button in order to boost her damage. Whenever the gloved finger turns, whenever there's an X over it, you cannot hit the boost button, or it will reset down to its default level, which I think is 75. So, boost tends to favor Guardian Forces with longer attack animations. And I almost get through the fire cave with only one random battle, which is pretty uncommon as far as I know. But a couple of bombs show up. Unfortunately, Quetzalcoatl did not yet learn Card by this point. And Quistis is just advising me to use Scan to discover their weaknesses. But they're fire enemies in the fire cave, so their weakness is Shiva, the ice summon. And meanwhile, while Shiva's coming out, I can stock up on some fire. So something I glossed over that Quistis explained in that fast-forwarded segment right before the fire cave, she was explaining how magic junctioning works, and it's a pretty important system. And magic junctioning is a system that a lot of people tend to overcomplicate. And I partially blame the game's vomit-inducing, atrocious-ass menus. In this game, you can basically equip magic to your stats. That's junctioning in a nutshell. Every spell has a different impact on each stat. It's the same thing as equipping different pieces of armor to boost different stats, except instead of armor, it's your spells. It's a level of abstraction. That's really all there is to magic junctioning. You just have to experiment around a little bit to see what works best, which spells will boost which stat the best. That's the gist of it. There are nuances you'll pick up on as you get further in, like secondary effects. We'll learn more about that after the fire cave. Also, if you understand how it works, you will never have to complain about drawing, because there's this old, I don't want to spend 20 minutes drawing criticism that gets leveled at FF8. But what takes longer? Grinding out a couple of levels in a JRPG that really don't net you that much of a gain? Or spending the same amount of time drawing a couple of spells to max your HP out, or max your strength out, or whatever? It's a fast track through grinding. I don't think it's even close to being as tedious as traditional JRPG grinds. Anyway, though, this is Ifrit. Basically, we're just gonna spam Blizzard with Quistis and spam Shiva with Squall. And I believe I screwed boosting Shiva's attack up a fair bit in this. I think this time Yeah, this is, I think, the only time I summon Shiva in this fight where I don't get the boost counter reset back to its base state. And it hits fairly hard, especially given how little HP Ifrit has. Ifrit has about 1,000 to 1,100 HP at this point. So, I believe... Oh, that's a cool attack. Should take one more Diamond Dust to finish this off. And you can see you have plenty of time left over. What you can do, if you want a slightly better bonus at the end of this, you can just drag the fight out for another 5 minutes. Yeah, there you can see I was mashing square when it was... I did it again, actually. When it's telling me I can, it resets back to 75, the boost counter. If you want a slightly higher bonus, you can just drag this fight out for another couple of minutes. You just want to make sure that you leave yourself a couple of seconds at the end if you decide to do that before finishing Ifrit, because this whole animation and his ending speech, they do take time off the clock, and you can fail the fire cavern if you drag it out too long and you forget about that there's a couple of seconds at the end. Here we go with more tutorials. And more fast-forwarding. She's now teaching us about elemental junctions instead of Guardian Force or magic junctioning. Elemental junctions and status junctions are pretty much an extension of magic junctioning. Except here, instead of... here you're equipping magic to give you extra defense or bonus damage instead of equipping it directly to your stats. It's same deal with status junctions. You're either getting extra protection from status effects, or you're giving yourself a chance to cause status effects upon attack. Like if I junction death to status attack, I have a chance to instant kill enemies when I attack them. Same with poison or sleep. You get the idea. Junctioning is not nearly as complicated as it's made out to be. It's basically just equipping spells to stats, or equipping your Guardian Forces so you can summon them, or equipping spells to raise your elemental defense or attack. Not a super complicated system. There is a lot of experimentation that you have to do to find the right mix of junctions, or again, you can just totally automate everything, and I want to equip Quistis with Card since beating Ifrit was just enough to teach Quetzalcoatl the card ability. And Quetzalcoatl is Quistis' junction. Draw that fire. So now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to mess around in the fire cavern a little bit, the fire cave, until I stumbled across a bomb so that I could card the bombs. And this is a brand new type of enemy. This one uses a lot of thunder magic, which you can see is pretty devastating in the early game. And I believe I tried to card this enemy, but I want to say I killed it before I had the chance. Yep, there we go. Not the greatest at estimating how much HP enemies have left. Carding is a lot like capturing Pokemon. You want to get them to low HP without killing them, because at full health, they are resistant to being carded. At lower health, you can use card, capture them, turn them into a card, and you're good to go. So here, I'm just trying to encounter a bomb so I can card it, use it in Triple Triad later. And this encounter provides me one, along with some bats. And while I'm whittling these guys down, which I believe takes a fair amount of time, why don't I talk a little bit about the battle system of the game. This game uses an active time battle, or ATB system, which basically just adds a real-time element to the traditional turn-based menu combat of older JRPGs. Your ATB gauge fills at varying paces. You can speed it up with stuff like haste. Guardian forces use their own ATB gauge, which typically fills much slower than the party members. And got a bomb card. They also have their own HP pool, so when you say, when Squall summons Shiva, Squall can no longer be hit. Shiva's going to be taking the hits for him. Okay, so with a bomb card, we can now exit the Fire Cave, head back to Balamb Garden, and play our first game of Triple Triad. Really, all that grinding was just to make sure I had a card very early in the game. And it wasn't even that much grinding, to be honest. And we're just skipping over some random battles against repeat enemies. Again, no reason to watch the same fight twice. It's gonna play out the same every time. Only reason I showed the encounter with the bombs a second time was just to show you how carding works. That is it for the game's first dungeon, though. Now we'll head back to Balamb and get ready for the field exam in a little bit. But first, I think Quistis has one more 2-minute long tutorial to get fast-forwarded over. Did I just say fast-forwarded? Fast-forwarded? She is teaching us a little bit more about Guardian Forces and the way XP and AP works. Also, the compatibility system. So, the way compatibility works is that the higher your compatibility with a Guardian Force, the faster you summon them. You raise your compatibility with a GF in a few ways that I'll talk about later. The main way is by summoning that GF. Summoning one GF, though, makes another's compatibility go down. So if I summon Ifrit a lot, that will raise my compatibility with Ifrit, but it will lower my compatibility with Shiva. And to be honest, that's kind of a pointless explanation because that system doesn't actually make a whole lot of difference in practice. And the other thing that she talked about in that tutorial was XP and ability points for Guardian Forces. But since I already went over that, no sense in repeating that information. If I am going too fast, because they do front load you with a whole lot of dense information here, a whole lot of systems, just let me know and I will go back over some of those key points. This is our first game at Triple Triad, though. Bear with me as I try to explain Triple Triad, because I am not great at the game, so my explanations might also be pretty bad. Triple Triad is played on a 3x3 grid. Two opponents take turns placing their cards down. You can only play a card once, and then it just stays there on the board. And the goal is to flip each other's cards and take control of them. You'll notice each card has 4 numbers, one on the left, one on the right, one on the top, and one on the bottom. You flip a card by placing your own card adjacent to it. If the number on the adjacent side of your card is higher than your opponent's, it will flip over and you will gain control of it, kind of like how I just flipped his Moogle, and how he flipped my bomb before that. Because his Moogle from that position is stronger than my bomb. It's 6-9. And I will flip my Mosquito back with Ifrit. He takes control of the Mosquito again. I can flip that card, but I really don't have any options. At this point, I kind of put myself into a corner and forced to draw, because I couldn't flip any more of his cards at that point. The goal is to have a majority of the cards under your control. If you have 6-4 or more, you will win and you get to take one of their cards permanently and add it to your collection. If it's 5-5, that will be a draw and there are no consequences for that. 4-6 would be a loss for you and you will lose one of your cards permanently. And I will get this little prick. That's a lot of vitriol for a fake kid who tied me in a fake card game. Those are the standard rules. We'll see more spins on those later on as we progress and more nuances, but more on that later as we encounter them. So this time I played it a little bit more smartly, still closer than I would have liked, but I'm using a weaker deck. Really, my only strong card is Ifrit, and then the bombs are pretty decent at this point in the game. The goal is to cover their weaknesses by putting them in a corner or against a wall on their weak sides and exposing their strong sides, making them harder to flip. And in retrospect, I think that was probably a poor choice to steal from that kid, to take from him. Give them nothing, but take from them everything. Anyway, that's our basic introduction to Triple Triad. That is it for the first episode of Let's Play Final Fantasy VIII. Very, very dense, system-heavy first episode. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take it easy. Have a good one.